So we're going to have a little deep dive into machine learning today. I thought we'd take the opportunity to build some models and stuff like that. And no, we're going to have a look at like useful applications of machine learning. So we're going to start off with some use cases. So I couldn't resist. I know that you had an astronaut here today, and I thought I had to take a photo that you should all know from the Kuiper Belt. So the little blue dot there, that's us. In 1990, this was Voyager turning back at 6 billion kilometers from Earth and actually looking and saying bye. And that's all that was left of us, this little blue dot. So I'm going to zoom in a bit because my use case is actually down here on Earth. This is my favorite view of the Earth. Every time I get in a plane and I fly across the Atlantic, I start playing around with that screen once I've watched all 20 films that I didn't see. And then I start looking at where the plane's flying, and then I'm twiddling the globe around, and I always like to get this backward face of the globe where you can't see any land on it. I think it's a really nice way of looking at the planet, and it gives you a kind of perspective. It really kind of messes with your head a little bit. You have to think, is it really? So this use case I'm going to tell us about, actually, whenever we tell this use case at Google, for a conference, for example, we always mention this island, and I didn't know where it was, so I thought I'd take the effort and find out where it was, and it happened to be slap bang in the middle of that view that I like to look at so much. And I don't know if you can see this here properly. So the island is called Kiribati, and this island has villages on it. This is nothing to do with machine learning yet. This is just really interesting. So this island has villages on it of London, Paris, Poland, okay, and banana. So like, if you ever look into entertain your kids. So what is the use case? The use case is global fishing. Maybe some of you have heard about it. It's a really cool use case. And normally we show this picture. So we show this picture of all these boats moving around, and Africa and Madagascar. So I thought Kiribati was there, but it's not. It's on the other side. So that was my little adventure into coming up to this use case. So what's going on here? Basically, whenever a fishing boat passes through a certain zone, they want to know if they're actually allowed to be fishing there. And whenever they catch someone that's illegally fishing, they say, oh, we were just passing through. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Okay, if the nets were down in the water, but you've got some time to get the nets out, they say, oh, we're passing through. So the machine learning application that they looked at was actually to take this data, and we're talking about 40 billion rows of events, and we've got like 200,000 ships broadcasting AIS all the time. That's the little positioning stuff for boats. And what they did was actually work out how these boats are traversing the water and what patterns correspond to fishing patterns. And they applied this, and so they could actually start fining, fishing companies that were illegally fishing. And one of the first ever successful prosecutions was in the waters of Kiribati, and the fine that they actually issued was 2.2 million, which was 1% of the country's global GDP. This is something you can do with machine learning. I'm guessing most people here are interested in fishing waters and stuff like that, so this is like, really take note, and you can start applying this as well. I'm going to take a few use cases today from retail. The reason I'm going to do retail is because I think it's quite broad, and everyone has some association with retail. Either we're working with retail, or we're involved in buying for ourselves, so we got a good understanding. So Ocado is a British supermarket. They're online only. It's got a ton of active customers, well, 5 tons of them to be precise. And basically what they want to do, they want to process all the messages that are coming at them. So they've got all these messages coming in on email and social media and things like that. And if one of their customers is unhappy about something, maybe the delivery didn't turn up on time, or the food was damaged or whatever, they want to capture that message and act. So their customer satisfaction is like really important to them. So they have to process all these messages. This message here is like, someone, I'm happy, my children love the website, it's so easy and blah, blah. That's great, we're right back to that, but maybe later, The thing that we need to deal with now is maybe another message that's coming at us, which is, where's my food? So it's a way that they can actually take text, unstructured text, and basically process that, apply NLP, so natural language processing. We offer an API for this, and they can actually then find out what the sentiment of the text is, extract the entities, and they can then go and use this to actually help provide a better customer satisfaction. This and I'm not going to read them all out because it's going to take a long time, but these are some of the areas within retail where you might want to look at machine learning. And it's actually quite a lot, no? I mean, so it ranges from everything from supply chain to pricing to, customer insights. So we've got this whole range. So it's not just in one area. It might be that you're looking for anomalies. It might be you're trying to forecast a trend, or you're trying to predict, you're trying to make recommendations. So there are all these kind of applications that you can use machine learning for to actually improve your business, whether that's inside to actually become more economic, or outside to improve your relationships with your customers, or generate more revenue, all those important things. This is just a number. It's done by a research company. But I want this number is just basically to think, this is not the only important number out there, but 9 in 10 people in their survey said, if the company was able to predict my intent better and suggest more intuitive products, I would use them above everyone else. Now, I know there are tons of research firms coming up with tons of statistics like this, but I just want to think about it for a moment. I just want to ask you to think about, okay, if this is happening, if customers are starting to expect something more from us, can we afford not to do this? I would say that the answer is no. I'm sure there's a lot of discussion to be had around that, but if I look at my own life, my personal life, I see more and more how I interact with machine learning and AI, or the result, the product of that. Whether it's, for example, when I connect to Spotify and I'm actually want to find some new music, or when it's, as Bill showed us earlier, I'm trying to work on a document like now, and I can just go and find a document. It's becoming more and more something I use, and it's becoming more and more intuitive. And I think our customers, they really appreciate advice, which is actually seems, this is not something that's just obstructive. This is something that's just actually improving my engagement with you. So I think that companies are already acting in this space. So companies are actively thinking about this space. They have a great chance of actually going forward and being more successful with their customers. But what this means is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes to actually get that information out so we can start doing these things. Recommendation engines don't just pop up out of the ground. You have to think about, what data am I going to use for it? How am I going to collect that data? How am I going to process it? Which model should I choose? And when you've done all of those things, you're saying, all right, great, I have this fantastic model now. It's able to predict stuff for me, and my customers really like it. That was today. Tomorrow, there's more insight, there's more data, things are changing. You need to go and retrain that model and see if your new model is actually more predictive and more useful than what you had before. If you're not doing that, you're static. These things don't just learn by themselves. You need to go and actually feed them new data and retrain them. So this is a very simple, naive look at a neural network. Neural networks are immensely popular at the moment for all sorts of things, including things like recommendations. There are more classical regression models and let's stick for regression model. There are more classical things that you could use to do a recommendation, like collaborative filtering, for example. But people are starting to use, they're looking at the capacity of neural networks, because neural networks have something that's really quite unique to them, I would say, and that's the ability to generalize very well. If you can't generalize, what does that mean? It means, for example, if I was creating a model which was taking advantage of a whole load of features and then trying to get a good regression, and let's say I'm overfitting because I'm just plugging all that stuff in there, and I think, okay, this is working well, but then I go and apply that to a new set of people, whether in the same domain, but let's say on the edge of it, and things are changing. My model, if it's too specific, it might not really recognize their behavior or what's going on. Deep neural networks help with that. They're very good at generalizing. So for recommendations, there's actually ways that you can take the good parts of regression with a more, let's say, a more classical setup, and then go for a deeper neural network in the same model to actually get a model which has both aspects of memorization, so learning the things that are important that it's seen before, but at the same time, flexible enough to actually be useful and not just come with the same answer because it's this. So what's changed in the last few years? Why is this all happening now? Well, machine learning has been around for a long time. And a lot of the models that you see, especially used in competitions up until a few years ago, and still when people are running this like by themselves in their own machines, are kind of limited by the amount of processing power you had. If you think about a good model implies that it's probably going to have to do quite a lot of work. And then on top of that, we've got a lot of data. Now, if we mash those two things together, we need a lot of those things on the right to start processing it. These things on the right here are TPUs. You don't have to use TPUs, you could use GPUs or anything else, but TPUs are actually very useful for us. We brought out second generation. This is worth standing still, because I think this is one of the differentiators for Google Cloud in the space of machine learning. So these things are 180 teraflops per circuit. They're ASIC, so they're designed specifically for a certain task. In this case, actually calculating floating point operations. 180 teraflops, what does that mean? It means if we put them in a pod, and I'll show you a photo of that in a moment. Sorry, Shelby, and she knows why. Well, Shelby said to let you all in the joke. When I showed her this photo, she said, it looks like something from the 1970s. I'm a kind of 1970s guy, where, I like the 70s. I like a lot of stuff in the 70s, so this really appeals to me. These are our pods of those TPUs. Each pod is 11.5 petaflops. What do those numbers mean in real terms? What do they mean for anyone else? They mean we were translating, for example, we were taking our models like Translate and retraining that in a couple of days. And now we can do it in a couple of hours. So if you think about these use cases that maybe were involving lots of data and lots of complexity, now we have the ability to actually go and retrain them in relatively short amount of time and to get a new model out there which could potentially impact our conversation with our users. So the message that I want to take from this is that machine learning is a really good fit with cloud. Cloud offers you it will provide you this infrastructure to go and actually take advantage of that. So how do we do that? Well, we do it in two ways. So on the one hand, on the right-hand side here, we have our managed APIs. This is a little bit about the democratization of machine learning. So what we're trying to do in the machine learning space is get more people involved. I just explained in my last talk that I have 2 children. And whilst I'm not sure if my children are going to grow up and become data scientists, I think one wants to be a firefighter and the other one, we're going to find out. But I know when they grow up and they participate in the world, machine learning is going to be there. It's already here now. We're on the cusp and things are just accelerating. I want my kids to know what machine learning is, what it's about, and more importantly, what people are using it for. I don't want it to be something that they don't have that connection with the world, that the world just kind of passes them by. In our effort to democratize artificial intelligence and machine learning, what we're trying to do is provide a space for people to interact with. On the right-hand side, we're taking models that we've actually trained to solve, let's say, common problems. OCR, taking a translation, going from speech to text. We're opening them up on open APIs that developers can use in their applications, making single REST calls to actually get a result. So you saw the video demo earlier, those kind of things. So that's one way of kind of opening up at least the usage and getting more people interacting with the capabilities. On the left-hand side, we have TensorFlow and cloud machine learning. I would say the big differentiator between Google Cloud and other clouds, and I think that other clouds are actually following us, so we definitely have the lead in this space, and it was the reason why I joined Google as well. I'm a big data fan, and if you look at the big data technology, a lot of it, there's a relationship with Google. Either they publish white papers, or in the most recent years, open sourcing a ton of frameworks. So why is this important? TensorFlow is an open sourced project for machine learning. It has something like 50,000 stars on GitHub. So you saw Linux has 20,000. Imagine how many people are involved with this then. Everyone knows Linux. People have an affiliation with Linux. So 50,000, that's 1.5 times more that are actually there using, I should say 2.5 times, but they're there using it, experimenting with it. So first of all, there's a lot of collaboration. That innovation that we spoke about earlier, about actually having people contribute to this space and seeing what's going on and moving the needle, is the same thing what's happening in machine learning. Having it open source means we can all collaborate and work together. And we have a managed service, so we do that for our data, big data frameworks as well. But we have a managed service that you can take your model, come and run it us. It kind of puts the kind of, let's say, the responsibility square on our shoulders to do a couple of things. Make sure that we're giving you the best price. Make sure that we're providing the best security. Make sure we're providing the best performance. And if not, you've written it in open source, so you can go and run it somewhere else. So your investment's in good hands. Also, if a lot of people are working on this project, it means there are a lot of developers and data scientists and analysts out there in the market that are working with it. So when you're looking to recruit more people to actually accelerate your effort in that space, there are people in the market that understand this technology. You don't have to go and just start from scratch and train them on something new. So open source is a really big part of machine learning as well. If you're not using an open source framework for your machine learning, shame on you. You really should start considering it, because it really will put you in a better position for the future. This is a quick architecture, and we don't have to go through all the details here, but what I basically want to say, this is the architecture of the video API. The most difficult part of this, the part that cost the most time to program, was the front end, the stuff that you saw. And we do that in App Engine. That's, my egg is now hard-boiled. So we do that in App Engine. All the stuff on the bottom is basically completely serverless. So you take your video, you upload it to cloud storage. We have serverless functions there listening. And if there's more events happening, we will spin up automatically more functions. And then with each video we pick up, we will call the API, process it, extract the metadata. We take the metadata, so we're like the labels that you saw earlier, which Lee demonstrated. We see at which index it happens, and we will serve that up. In this case, we're putting it back onto cloud storage, but we can put that in a database or whatever else we want to put it, so we can make it searchable and available for our application. So you can already take, if you've got something around those APIs I just mentioned, like speech to text, translation, processing videos, processing images, extracting sentiment from images, or recognizing where people are standing on images. There are many things you can do, and you can just use the service architecture and really get up to, hit the ground running. If you're going to go deeper and you're going to start building some of the stuff yourself, there are a few things I want to leave you with to actually think about in that process. And make sure the developers that are working for you are giving you good answers on these questions. So we want to do machine learning. We want to be here at the top doing our machine learning. We want to start getting this predictive power, making a business impact. It is right at the top of this stack. Right at the bottom is infrastructure. So again, using a framework like Tensorflow that you can run on basically any architecture, that gives you that capability. If you're using another project which doesn't have those capabilities, and then you want to take something and bring it into production, you're going to have to have your engineers find a way to actually taking that from the research space into the production space. That is one of the key motivators behind TensorFlow and inside Google itself. The Google Brain team, they were doing research stuff, and then when they tried to move it to production, basically there had to be an engineering effort to take those learnings and that model, and now how are we going to get this thing in production? So having infrastructure that we can do that on, and having the applications that actually facilitate that, is a very powerful thing. As we move up, we come to the kind of, let's say, the body of water and the data that we need to actually run this on. Some of the key challenges there are around collecting data, processing data. These are all major efforts that need to be made if you're actually going to use machine learning. So you have to have good answers to these things. And then on the top, we can do machine learning. If you don't do it like this, you end up like this. And this is basically what happened. You'll be up there and you'll be like, oh, I got something in production, and boom, it's gone, and you've got a big problem. This architecture, and I won't go into too many details about this at the moment, but I would just say that this is an architecture we use to help customers build things when they're using TensorFlow. And the important parts to kind of look at here is that we have frameworks like Dataflow, which is this one here, which is actually a unified batch and process streaming framework. What that means is I can take an action that I want to perform on my data, like a mapping or a function that I want to perform, or a certain processing action, and I can apply that to batch data. So think about the data that you already have that you want to use to train your model, but I can also apply it to real-time data coming in on a stream. The same model, just making a few changes of how the data's actually coming in. That's what a unified model allows you to do. So if you look at the bottom there we have Dataflow again. So when you're ready to make those predictions, sometimes people forget, I've just spent all this time taking this data, extracting all the features, and then I trained a model. Now we're going to go make predictions. What are you going to make predictions on? Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction on this. Okay, so what do we have to do with that to actually get it in the same space as our prediction? Yeah, you have to extract those features and Now you see why having a unified model might actually make a lot of sense. They're both serverless as well. And again, as I said, they have open source projects, Apache Beam, which you can create your stuff on or have your developers create your stuff on. All the things I said about TensorFlow apply to Apache Beam as well. Developers working in the community, something which you can go and run on different infrastructure if you want to move that flexibility. The other one is the Cloud ML. So here we're using it to train our data, and here we're using it to predict. Question that comes up quite often, if I create something in TensorFlow, where am I going to make my predictions? Well, it's up to you. You could take your TensorFlow model and deploy a compiled version to your mobile phone. So you could, for example, you would be doing translate, and you might have seen the example where we actually take you take your camera and you hold it up against a sign, for example, in Japanese, and then it gives you the English text. But let's say you're not online at the moment. You still want that functionality to work. So you might be saying in your application, if I don't have an internet connection, use this local model, which is going to be smaller, it's going to be less powerful. If I do have a connection, then use this model, And then you would make an API call, and then you can come back to cloud machine learning. So you have that ability. TensorFlow itself, I'm letting you into some of the things that I explain to developers as well, because I think this is where things kind of go wrong if you're not asking these questions. So I just told you all about all the good thing about TensorFlow. This is the engine of TensorFlow. If you want to improve the engine, you'll have people work together to actually collaborate in that space. But there's a lot going on there at the moment. It's pretty solid. As you go up the stack, these are the kind of important things to pay attention to. Layers. If you're building models there, it's a great place to learn about machine learning. But it's a place that when you want to move from one architecture to another, you need to go and think about how's that going to look? How's that processing going to go run? That's why we created estimators and canned estimators. An estimator itself gives you the ability to actually just say, this is my model, this is some of the things, without doing all the wiring up. And we have a custom estimator as well, so you can take advantage of something very specific that you want to create. And you can take that model and then run it on your local machine, but then also say to Cloud ML, for example, go and run this in the cloud and train it on big data. So it's really important, the thing to take home here, it's really important to kind of challenge people, at what level are they interacting with this stack? Where are we? Where should we be? And right at the top there are the canned estimators, and these things are these are kind of out of the box. They're not like the machine learning APIs that I showed you. You still have to actually tell how your data's going to fit, and you have to extract the features and do more of that kind of stuff. But basically, if you've got a common problem, like a common regression problem, something like that, there are estimators there that you can use as well. And the stuff Keras is another framework which you can use, which we support as well. A lot of data scientists are using Keras as well. It also gives you flexibility of backends. So there are things to think about there, and there are things to have that discussion with your lead data scientist or the product manager of your data science team that say, how are we actually going to do this? Or a data engineer too? And just start asking some of these questions. It's not about necessarily actually understanding what's going on in all those layers, but it's having good answers like, are you going to build them? Okay, can we train that in different spaces? What's the effort that you need to make to help me get this to production? Because I want this in production, because I want to actually start offering new capabilities to my customers. This, if you get any time left today, which I'm imagining you won't, but if you do have any time, downstairs there's an Instant Insights demo, and basically they show Cloud ML making predictions about which advert to show which taxi. So imagine taxis driving around town. Some are coming from the airport, going into town. Other ones are going back. Some have 3 people and some have 2. And this is a running model you can go and look at and basically see the whole flow. So we take the message, and once we receive that message, we make a prediction and we say, oh, look, there's one person in a taxi, they're heading to the airport. Maybe they'd like to have a coffee. Or there are 3 people going into town. Maybe they'd like to go to this theater show. You can draw your own conclusions, what's a good idea. But the thing is, this is all serverless. So you can actually go and see how you would set up these production pipelines. And the other thing is here as well to say is that we can take data flow, and the same data that's coming in to make our predictions, we can filter off and have it go into our, for example, BigQuery, which is our data warehouse, streaming real time with the data that's already there. So when someone phones up and says there's a problem, you can actually look at the data you've been receiving and query not only the data you had yesterday, but the stuff that's coming in now. These kind of capabilities enable you to act in this space. They enable you to make things quickly, they enable you to get it to production, and they enable you to actually start working with in production when you have problems. That's the story that we have around machine learning. This is a photo of a TPU, and I've got 6 minutes if there are any questions. I'm happy to take some. Silence. Come on, someone give me a question. Yeah. So I would say there's a few answers. So the question is, yeah, I'm going to repeat it. Yeah, I got that. So the question is like with natural language processing, how do we cope with different stacks? Which one should we use? Is one open, the other one closed? How do we kind of navigate that space? So the open APIs that we have, those APIs will give you capabilities out the box. And I think if you're bringing that, so if I was designing an application and I wanted, for example, my application is, let's say a message, let's say I'm taking we used the example earlier with that chat. So the chat's coming in and I want to process the chat and actually have a signal real time about saying if the person's happy or angry. So I can, after the chat's finished, I can maybe steer that chat somewhere else to actually have someone call back or look into what was going wrong, and give a very short turnaround. If I was looking at bringing those capabilities to an application, let's say soon, quickly, I will look at those APIs and see if that fits, because that's something you can really speed up your development. The good thing there, and if you're going in that space, is choose an API which is built on a good standard, a good REST standard, and you can actually, it's little work to implement, and you can actually, let's say, proxy, so you can put something in front of it and actually work with it. And if you want to change that out for some other capability or some other vendor later, the engineering effort is very small. If you're going to go for something, let's say, more specific, and you're really trying to target like nuances which are very unique to your use case, use something like Tensorflow as opposed to, let's say, one of our competitors' offerings, which is a little bit more closed, because Tensorflow is an open project. If you get into problems, it's not about one company saying, this is our thing. It's something supported by a whole group of people. And they will give you help in that space. They will give you a chance to take the development further. And importantly, a question that I got asked recently, and I think it's really worth thinking about as well, was at some point, some organizations are going to get asked a question. And that question is going to be, to an auditor, explain me how it works. And that's going to be an exciting time. So if you get that question, it's going to be really good to have a system that you're using, which is open, and you can use tools to actually look at what's going in at each level, to provide data to the auditor saying, look, you might not understand it, but at least I can show you what's going on. This is happening there. It's not just some black box and your core business is now tied into this thing that you can just say, well, I ask it something and it gives me an answer, There's a big dialogue around TensorFlow. And even the models that we use internally, we have a lot of effort spent, for example, to like an inception model for images. It's a trained model on images, which we've brought out into the community, so other people can develop their own image sets. There's a lot of shared knowledge in this space. So I'd really try to be in that space where there's shared knowledge, so you can have access to people, but also get access to what's going on when you need to. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
If other questions, we have a mic now also, so everybody can hear the question.
Okay.
This is your chance.
There's time for one last question, if there's a pressing question.
Time for one last question. Yeah. Brave.
One of the issues with speech recognition and living in the Netherlands is that Dutch is mostly one of the last languages you support. What is the speed you think that something like that will come here?
So if you're talking like actually processing speech to text. So I'm not going to commit to any like planning on stage. I do know from my own personal engagements with company, or personal, I say like in a business context, that we're really open to have that conversation. If it's something that's going to change what you do and you've got a stake in it, we're happy to be a partner to explore the possibilities. So we're happy to have that conversation. We are obviously working to have that support for all languages. It's just a question of engineering resources and linguists and everything else that we need to make that happen. So a lot of our models have moved into the NLP space at the moment. So you'll see a lot much better. But if you need, if you have a specific requirement around that, maybe reach out to the sales, field sales that's on your table if you have someone there, or otherwise I'll point someone in your direction, and let's have that conversation. That's something we're really happy to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. And Robert will stick around, so... So in a sort of natural way, the agenda changed a little bit. And at this point, we will be at our roundtables, and your table lead will lead the discussion. And we take it from there, okay?
My name is Mario, and I'm going to be your host for the next 45 minutes, because I love the interaction you're currently having on the roundtable. And we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to make from the conversation, we're going to turn it into a challenge. So I hope you're excited. Yeah, a little bit? Okay. So why are we doing this? We are going to apply a little bit of design thinking. This is something that's very deeply embedded in Google, and we want to share with you how that works. But before I'm going to explain what we're actually going to do, I want to recap a little bit and give you some context. So digital is radically redefining how consumers interact and how businesses are being shaped or need to transform. If you think back the early 2000s, it was through the web. Now it's through this device. And in the very near future, it's going to be in much more ambient ways. If you think of all the intelligent devices that are around you and can help you in any context. So for example, Gartner forecasts that in just 2 years' time, 1/5 of the world population will have a virtual personal assistant that they will use in their mobile device. And at Google, we see the same sort of transformation going on. More than 50% of all the queries happen on this device. But what really strikes me is that 20% of these queries are voice-based. And that leads me to the following thought. This is a new area of consumer experience. It creates a new standard. So think of it as you're not only competing against other companies, but you're actually competing against the best experience a consumer has ever had, regardless of industry. So at Google, we have the mission to organize world's information, make it relevant and universally accessible. And we do that in many ways and shapes. So what we're going to do next is to give you a closer look how we are using that in the Google Home, on your mobile device, and even in the car. And more importantly, how you as a business can also benefit from that. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Lee. Give her a big round of applause. And after that, I'll come back to you to explain a little bit more about the challenge.
So hi everyone, my name is Lee Boonstra. I work as a customer engineer for Google Cloud team. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about Google Home and Google Assistant, just how that works all under the hood. Also chatbots. This picture that you see here is actually a picture that was made in 2016. It was on Google I/O. This is our CEO, Sundar. And he came on stage and he said, like, at this time, from now on, we will move from a mobile-first world to a more AI-first world. Now, what does he mean? Back in the past, when we were creating applications, we made it that way that we'll make sure that it works on a mobile phone, because if it works on a mobile phone, and then we can just resize it with responsive design, and so that it runs across any type of device. And for a very long time, that was our way of thinking, our design thinking, how we would create applications. But now we are on a time that we collected so much data and we have so much computing power in the cloud that we finally can change our way of thinking and make a more AI-first approach, where we let our applications or interfaces be created by machine learning. And we do that with the Google Assistant. The Google Assistant, that is our smart assistant, is implemented in all the latest Google products that you can buy. Like think about the Google Watch, think about the Android phone. I think all Android phones from Marshmallow and up. the Google Home, the smart speaker, but also in cars, we're trying to implement it there so that you can, when you're driving in a car, you can ask like, oh, how is my commute to Paris? How should I drive? Can you turn on the radio? And instead of looking to a screen or interacting with a screen. So it's a conversation between you and Google that helps you to get more things done in this world. Now, just to make a couple of things clear, the Google Home, that is the voice-activated speaker, and it really is nothing more than a speaker that's connected to the internet. It has a microphone, you can talk to it, but the whole magic around it, that is actually the Google Assistant. So that is the conversation between Google and you. And that is implemented in the phones, but also in the Google Home. Now, you will also hear me a couple of times referring to actions on Google. Now, what is that? Think about it as apps. It's how you can extend the assistant. So you can create your own conversations, your own chat logics, and implement that on top of the Google Assistant. And we can do that with tools like API.ai, which I will talk about later. But just to let you know what Google Assistant can do, you can ask the Google Assistant to manage tasks. This photo that you see here is actually a question to the assistant like, yeah, what's my confirmation number to my flight to Philadelphia? And then the Google Assistant will answer you with the PNR that they get from the flight. How does the assistant know that? Well, you're logged into a Google account, which has connection to your email and and your calendar and so on. So the Google Assistant is smart enough to figure that out for you. You can ask things like, okay, how will my transit be? Is it busy on the road? And the Google Assistant will know that by connecting to all kinds of external services. So you can use it to plan the day, but you can also use it to ask questions. So I could, for example, ask like, who is the king of the Netherlands? And the assistant will answer, well, that's Willem-Alexander. But then my next question could be like, okay, and what's the name of his wife? And then the assistant will know that the context is Willem-Alexander, so his wife, her name is Maxima. So, I mean, that is something that is very smart. You need more than a decision tree to figure that out. You need to understand the context. You need to understand what was passed in and to keep that context. You can use also the assistant for making memory. So I can ask like, oh, what is my favorite? My favorite color is blue. And if I ask the Google Assistant next week, what's my favorite color again? Then the assistant will know, well, you told me it was blue. So it can remember things. And you can also use it to control your home. If you have all types of smart devices, like the Philips Hue bulbs or the Nest, you can say like, oh, turn on the lights, turn up the heat, turn the volume on, or play my favorite TV show on YouTube or on Netflix. As long as you have smart devices that are connected to the internet, then your Google Assistant can communicate with that. Here, I came up with an example how you can implement that logic for Google Home or for the Google Assistant within your company. I mean, we're working all at companies, and I assume that we all have internal applications running. Those are applications that run behind a firewall. So one of such applications could be a meeting room application to book a meeting room. So I could, for example, ask the assistant like, hey, okay, Google, let me talk to book a meeting room. Book a meeting room, in this case, is my custom action. That is the action that I, as a developer, will create. And what you will see is the Google Assistant will talk back and will say, like, okay, sure, here's book a meeting room. And then, at that moment, the voice of the assistant will change, because then it will go to a voice that the developer chose for their custom action. So you're coming into the custom action flow now. So like, think about it as an app or a flow. And we'll start asking with the welcome intent, like, okay, welcome, how can I help you? And I say like, okay, yeah, I'd like to book a meeting room for 3 persons. Sure, for when? Tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. And what happens here is tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m., or I want to book a meeting room for 3 persons. 3 persons is a parameter that will be sent to an external system. So imagine that you have a book a meeting room internal application, which has a REST API. I just pass in 3 persons, And then the API would handle it back. I would say, okay, the next request that I should make is a request with a time. Okay, tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. And then the system will tell me back, like, okay, it went fine, meeting room is booked, and then the assistant can tell me that. Or the meeting room was not booked because maybe it was already booked before, and then it can come up with a second suggestion. A thing like this is not so difficult to create with a tool like API.ai. API.ai is like a developer console. It's like a SaaS application, a website. You go there, and you can create all these intents. So you can write out these conversations. But it also contains machine learning, so you can train the system. So when you ask questions, it becomes smarter over time. If you ask the question a little bit wrong, it will understand which question you meant because it got trained through machine learning. So API.ai, that is the developer console that you can start using. And when you use that, you create your conversation only once, and then you can implement it for various solutions. So I can deploy it on Google Home. I can deploy it on Facebook as a bot. Then I need to add that person the bot as a friend in my Facebook account, and I can start talking to it. I can have a chatbot on my website. I can implement it easily with an iframe, or I can integrate it real in my own system and in my own look and feel for phones. You name it, we have all the integrations already available in the API.ai developer console. It's just a matter of flipping a switch. Actions SDK, that is a client library that's currently written in Node. That is in case API.ai is limited for you, or in case you want to extend and do some more magic, then you can choose to implement all these ideas by yourself. It's a little bit more work, because then you also need to come up with the natural language processing and machine learning, which API.ai has out of the box. So here you can see it again. Can you book a meeting room for tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m.? I call web service, book a meeting room, and I pass in tomorrow 2 to 3 p.m. The web intent, this is API.ai. You create a web intent there. And that you can see that as a kind of flow. It's a mapping between what the user says and the action that needs to be taken. So for example, I created a while ago a Google Home application where I could ask Google Home, like, hey, what's on TV tonight? Oh, on what channel? I want to know what's on TV on RTL 4. And then it would read out the whole programming guide. Now, how would I do that? I would create a web intent where I ask what's on a channel. And then the user can pass in whatever channel they like, but it will take this part, it will be fired to the backend. And I assume that I have some kind of magic, some kind of service there that can query the TV guide. The thing that I passed in, that is an entity. So you can predefine a bunch of entities, see it as parameters. So you know that there is some kind of hard variable that you need to send to a system, so there you can act on. Yeah, so this is what you see here. Here you create the web intents, there are the entities. There's a session for integrations. This is for changing, if you want to deploy it on Facebook or on Slack or on Skype. And there's also a section for training the APIs. So if you have created these web intent and people have been asking questions, yeah, you can train it, you can correct it. If they gave you the wrong answer, you can say, okay, well, next time don't answer this anymore, and then it will remember that. Here you see the webhook and parameters. So you can create webhooks. This is actually, you enable a webhook and then you pass in the URL to your external web applications. And then when you create your intents, you just click on actions and you say like, okay, every time when I ask this event or this intent, actually you need to act on it through a webhook. And then I give it the webhook name, in this case, get by channel, that will be passed to that URL. Now what I did in the background for this is I use Cloud Functions, but you can use any type of backend you like. The reason why I choose Google Cloud Functions is because in this case I don't need to worry about a virtual machine or a server. I just create a function somewhere in the cloud and then let Google scale all the machines for me, and I just don't care about backends at all. So I just create a JavaScript function in this case that would query the TV guide. I don't think we need to go into this now. This is very technical, but ask me if you have questions about it. Just so you know, these kind of cloud functions, you can write that on the Google Cloud in a native editor on the cloud platform. So you don't need to install any tools. You can just do it right away. Yes, and then you deploy your action. And once you deploy your action, then you can test it. So this is within the Google Cloud Platform. There is a web simulator, and then you can authorize it with your Google account, and then you say like, this is my API.ai account that I'm currently using, and at that moment you get in the simulator you get like a similar behavior as if you would have a real Google Home. So I could start typing to it, and it gives me answers back. But I could also use the microphone from my computer and ask questions, and then it would read out the answers as if it would be the Google Assistant. And once you're done, when you're really happy with this conversation, then you can deploy it. Kind of like an app store, you need to register the name, and then will be whitelisted in the Google App Store or Assistant App Store, kind of. That means that there's an approval process. Somebody within Google will check your bot, see if it's valid enough. See also if you don't let the microphone open non-stop, because that is actually one of the guidelines. You can never leave the microphone open. Out of the box, that doesn't work on a Google Home. It always keeps it open for a minute or maybe less, and then automatically shuts off. But if you don't let your users know that the microphone is open, then your refill process will fail. So make sure that you always ask for more questions. So when you create a conversation, you should always answer like, okay, this is the answer. Do you like to hear more? Okay, and this is the answer. And in case you're really interested in this, in creating Google Assistant conversations or using API.ai, there is this design document that Google created that can help you with creating conversations like this. Definitely a good read. And I think with that, I can hand it over to you, Mario.
Thanks, Lee.
Yes.
Thank you, Lee. What we try to do is to basically show you the technical toolkit. So the next ingredient we want to share with you, and after that you're really going to get your hands dirty, is a conceptual creative toolkit. So if you can switch to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah. So this is all about creating the future. You now have the opportunity together to create the future together. If you go to the next slide. So at Google, we think of creativity and innovation not as an event. We see it as a process, perhaps even more as a mindset. And we worked a couple of years ago together with Stanford, IDEO, and a couple of other experts to develop this method, which is called design thinking. And basically, it consists of three main concepts. So I wanted to walk you through because I think it's very useful in your exercise. So the first one is, if you are starting to build something, you don't start with a revenue model and buying some great technology. It always starts with knowing the user. Once you know the user, their beliefs, their needs, that's the perfect starting point to build a magical solution. Now the next part you want to do, and basically, again, some practical guide, you could apply a framework of three pillars of knowing the user. The first is analyze. So what data do you have available to analyze the user? Second one is observe. There are ways you can observe your users. And the third one is to ask them. There's no better input than asking a user how they feel, what they need, etc. So the second one, Andre Kuipers already touched upon. We don't think in incremental improvements of 10%. No, we want to improve and think about 10x. A perfect Google example, I think, is Google Loon. In rural areas where there was no Wi-Fi, it was a childish idea to come up with air balloons that could send out Wi-Fi signals. But it's these ideas that in a grown-up setting are considered impossible, which are the strongest ideas. So ask yourself in the team, what if? Because asking the what if question will make it bigger. And the final one is be product-driven. You want to make sure that you fail fast. Because if you incorporate that, you will learn if you succeed, but also if you fail, and you can incorporate that learning. So we see the success not by how high your success rate is, but how often you have tried something. Well, okay, go to the next one. All right, so coming back, Lee gave you the technical toolkit, how you can build a conversational customer experience. I hope I've just gave you a little bit of a toolkit, how you can have a creative process to come up. So we're going to put that together. So the challenge we ask you, and you can continue the conversation you had in your roundtable, redesign the customer experience by creating a concept that uses this conversational AI. So that's your objective. We're going to have handout tables on the round tables, which is a framework you can use to put in your ideas. You're going to be time limited. I'm sorry, we're already far over time, but again, you only have 20 minutes. Your chance to win a Google Home, I'm afraid I can't keep up with that promise. We don't have Google Homes, unfortunately. But the important thing is, this was not intended to be in there, so apology. It's going to be Netherlands, end of year. We're going to score based on business impact. So how big is the impact you're going to come up with the concept? What's the customer experience like? So who is your customer? What are the integrations you could use? So that could be your own data, could be external data. And finally, originality. Could you make a flow describing the conversation you would be having with a customer, with one of your partners, employees, etc. Can you go to the next slide? So as a final example, to give you some food for thought, this is a very cool concept that eBay demoed a couple of weeks ago. So I bought a camera 6 years ago, but with the technological advancement of smartphones, I think the camera in my pocket is far more powerful and easy to use. So I don't use my big camera anymore. So what I actually could ask eBay is, how much is my camera worth? And it would ask me a couple of questions like, okay, tell me the brand, the color, the condition. And it would then search in its own great database and could provide me with a very precise estimation of how much my camera is worth. I think these are the kinds of concepts you might be thinking about. So with that, I wish you all good luck, and the 20 minutes starts now. The end of the challenge. So please finish your discussions. It's a good sign, I think. You're having great conversations. So at the end of the challenge, what we'd like to do is to have a couple of teams come on stage to share with us their great concepts they came up. So are there any volunteers that think my concept is the next big thing? Awesome. What's your name, sir? Erwin? Yeah. Hi, Erwin. Hi. Can I ask you to pitch your concept you and your team came up?
I will. All right, so the idea started from the company I work for. Part of the activity is a retail store around gardening, pets, and baking. And what we wanted to do is to create Rob, the personal gardening coach. Because what we are a retail store or retail chain that provides premium products with a premium advice, and by doing so justify a premium price. But of course, if we have to wait until the customer shows up in our store with a problem that we can help to solve, then we might miss an opportunity. So the idea would be that we create a personal gardening coach, which is a chatbot in an app, so that when a client of ours walks through the garden and spots a bug on some of the plants, that he can open the app, call up Rob and say, "Hi, I've got a problem. I've spotted a bug." And then the chatbot would say, "Okay, let's see what we can do. Can you send me a picture?" Which would mean access to the camera. You send a picture, and then you start an entire conversation. And at the end of the conversation, you would have a solution to the problem. You would have the link to a product, and we would be able to tie it to an online order or a reference to the nearest store to come and pick up the product that we might be provide to them. And then it became really spacey because we said, you know, we have added value services. What would you think if we would send over a drone right now to do a scan of your garden as an added value service, so that we can find out how your garden is organized and whether this bug we spotted might spread out to other areas in your garden. Yeah, that was one of the fancy ideas around it. So what is the business impact? Well, the business impact is that we are there for our clients the moment they spot something. So the moment they detect something, that we can assist them and find a solution. We can tie it back to a full experience, so with an online order or a reference to a nearest store, and we would get better insights, because if we spot a bug in a certain area and we know that that is something that spreads very easily, we would be able, based upon client information, to send out warnings to other clients saying, well, there is something going on in the neighborhood, be aware, and if something goes wrong with the plants, there's a big likelihood that it might be linked to this. In terms of integrations, well, voice API, image and video API, geolocation, where are you, dear Mr. Client, but based upon what you have on the phone, that's easy. Then, of course, the client profile data we have, geolocation, weather data API, maybe there is something wrong in that area because of lack of weather, lack of water or something, lack of rain, like we are experiencing right now. And then, of course, a bug, disease, and solution database that we need to tie it all together. So you see a lot of integration points, and we're not even talking about the drone. So in the customer flow, that's what I already explained. So the customer journey, you walk through the garden, you see something, and you open the chatbot, and you start having the conversation. Voila.
I love the idea. One question. Would you also have a female assistant?
Of course.
Great. I love the idea. Any other volunteers? Come up front. And what's your name, sir? Geert. Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Well, my name is Geert, and we're in the home care business, I think, supporting the home care system in the Netherlands, with Buurtzorg the Netherlands. So we looked at a solution for home care nurses. So the nurse assistant would be a male, I think. So probably. I think they're really independent nurses. Most of the time they're at home with patients, so an assistant would be appropriate, I think. Most of the time they need to supply themselves with materials for wounds, for other things, for the patient at home. So there are things they will need external people to help them. That's one thing we do with our company, to just help them with IT solutions, to provide them information. But I think the customer experience could be supplying them with medical supplies without any extra time for calling to other companies for delivering them. So the business impact would be they will have much more time with the patients. That's something we always want to try to do with our solutions. Let me read something. That's the most important business impact. I think that they will have more time with the patients and less time administrating things. So the assistant will start, I think, with personal healthcare records. Social media ratings could be an integration for looking up ratings for suppliers. Speech API, of course. Electronic health records we already have. And maybe personal data from patients when they are at home, when you want something to deliver. How could it work? So the assistant would ask, what do you need? I know it's Mr. X because I'm already there, so the system knows. He has a wound. Okay, well, what do you want to do based on the wound? I want some new supplies, so it could be a question you can ask to the assistant. In connection with the data that we already have or could be available, that you could say, is there already a wound, other materials ordered? Can we ask you when you're at home? At what time should it be delivered? So it could be in conversation typed out based on some questions. And eventually they will order the supplies. And I think the benefit would be that the supplier would do the rest, so the nurse can go to the next patient. So that's part of our brainstorm session solution.
Thank you, Geert. So no more visits to the doctor. We have room for one final concept. Yeah? One more? You want to go as well? Okay, we're going to have two. Ladies first. But you need to be a little bit shorter on time to make sure that we cover both. Thanks. What's your name? Divya.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Divya. And the product or the innovation that we are launching is called as Companion. So it's a companion for the elderly people. And we see that there are lots of issues in our society now because all of us are becoming very individualistic. There's lots of growth in the elderly age group, and they have lots of aging effects, going into depression, feeling loneliness, and lots of old age illness. So what is the business impact through our companion would be that we will increase the quality of life for the elderly, we will bring happiness to their life, and we will improve their healthy life state, which in turn would help us in society and lower the health cost and the insurance cost. And I'll go to the customer flow first and then the integration. So it's a morning, the Google Home talks. Hello, Richard. So the interaction is starting from the Google Home. So it's not like I have to speak to my Google Home, it's Google Home speaking to me. And through natural language processing, NLPs, we can identify the mood of the person, we can identify time of the day, we can identify the agenda of the person, looking at the weather, health of the person, we can have a call to action in terms of each one of that. To give you an example, if I haven't spoken since morning, it will call to action to my friends or family that there is something wrong, I'm not in a right mood, or I'm not having good health, so it will call my relatives. If the weather is nice, it will call my friends to play a bridge with me. If it's raining outside and if I have to go outside, it will advise me to carry my umbrella. So this is the customer flow, just to give you an example. And the integrations, third box was integrations to APIs. It could be with voice recognition to interpret my mood. It could be with the healthcare systems, the weather data, the sentiment analysis, insurance companies, medical records, and the pill box. Thank you.
Wow. Really amazing. The last team that can present with a plant. Oh my God. Is this your Google Home? What's your name, sir?
Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Hi.
1 minute.
Okay, you want to be short? You asked me to be short, huh? Yeah. Okay. Actually, this is Wilson. You know Wilson from the movie Outcast? Actually, the ladies first, her idea is brilliant. Actually, we had the same idea. But we already have the solution here. This is the interface for the elderly. You can speak to your plant. It sees you, it feels you. So this is the solution, and we just build on the APIs that they are making. So, you know, here's the partnership.
And actually the first team, how to make sure the plant doesn't die, right?
Because it's for plastic. So.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So I'd like to close off. I hope you've had fun, a great interaction with your table, learned some new people, some new ideas. And I really hope that you can take away to start tomorrow building the new future using some of the conversational toolkit. So with that, I'd like to close off. Please give another round of applause for yourself. And I'd like to invite Eric Haddad for the closing session. It's okay?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Hi, everyone. So I understand I am the last speaker, so I will try to be very short. So I want just to give you, to not let you leave without having, let's say, a short update, a state of the business that we have hopefully now with Google Cloud. So I'm running the business for Google Cloud in Europe, so I'm looking at continental countries in Europe. So including Benelux, or Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg, and with André, with the leadership of André, and that you know. And so, you know, I joined Google Enterprise. Actually, it was Google Enterprise 6 years ago, and I used to work 10 years at Microsoft before. So I am in this cloud business I've been in this cloud business for the last 10 years, okay? What I can see and what I can say is, at the beginning, finally, the description was coming from Google to Microsoft, actually, okay? With real-time platform and mobility, okay, was the kind of description we could see at the beginning. So, was very beginning. So we saw kind of linear growth, okay, of the cloud adoption, depending on the country, but we could say that Nordic countries were maybe a little bit early adopter, France as well, UK as well, and now we start to see quite a big acceleration, and the description comes from machine learning and data management. This is where I see the description, and this is where I see when I discuss with customers like you from all industries across Europe, what we see is a lot of discussion related to machine learning, data management. Why? Because there is a big impact with the business, and there is a big driver related to the business, and CIO, CDO, and so on, they look for this kind of impact, and they can look at a very direct correlation. So we see this acceleration, and what we do as well in order to drive this acceleration is to invest. So you probably learned about that. We have approx 500 new releases of services. We have been having that for the last 12 months, and we continue. So we have quite an ambitious roadmap. We are investing $28 billion of capex in terms of data centers and infrastructure, so over the next 3 years. So there's big investment from Google in order to be very present, very serious in this Google, in this cloud business. And we are looking for more investment. So we want to be a real partner for enterprise, not only for startup and .com companies. I think we are quite recognized for that. We want to invest more in order to be sure that for enterprise business or industries we have this recognition as a partner. So we are investing in your success. I mean that we are not selling product, hopefully. I mean, this is the kind of mindset that I want the team have with you. We are trying to understand your challenges, your priorities, and in order to make that, we have reorganized our team in terms of verticals, industries. So we are trying to have people with the mindset of a vertical, like banking, like manufacturing, like gaming and so on, to be sure that we understand. For sure, from day zero, we cannot understand everything, but at least people in the team will try to learn from your challenge and priorities in order to be sure they understand and they can give you good answers, okay? And so, in order also to be sure that you benefit from best practices, we are also trying also to internally to share best practices that we have in terms of economics in order to give you some solution in terms of ROI, in terms of what works or what doesn't work, in terms of business solution. And lastly, in terms of support, something very tangible, we are, as we speak, we are hiring 3,000 people, technical people, from pre-sales to post-sales. It's quite big, I can tell you. Okay, since I just Googled, the first time I see so big hiring investment. So I'm part of a committee of hiring. So every week we have a dozen of new candidates that we approve, and hopefully we are able to bring these people in front of you, okay, for workshop, but also for post-sale, technical support, and any support or technical advice that you need. Today we have some logistic problem. It can happen. This is real time. So I should have removed it. Actually, I'm sure you saw this slide. So, you know, in a few words, so we have 2 million customers, enterprise customers, okay, B2B customers, and what's new today, quite with some modesty, okay, is we are working with all industries. We could say that before, some industries, some verticals were a little bit risk adverse with the cloud and maybe with Google. And so today we work with big banks like BBVA, HSBC, ING. So we have a real conversation and real partnership, strong partnership with bank. We have also a strong partnership with a few governments as well. So as you know, there is a quite very important rule called GDPR in Europe to come by May next year. So we are a plan in order to be absolutely compliant for that. We need to be absolutely comfort with that. We will be compliant. Okay, so I can tell you this is not because I got some questions related to that. Be relaxed. This is our life as well. Okay, if we are not GDPR compliant, we stop the business. Okay, we'll be GDPR compliant. So we have a plan for that. We communicate. Maybe we don't communicate enough. Okay, and I have a discussion tomorrow in order to see how we can better communicate proactively with our customer to be sure that you understand the plan and the roadmap. And for sure, I need to mention that we have quite a huge business with retailer and fashion, and so in all Europe, most of the big brands, well, not all, but many of the big brands in retail and fashion and related business, we have quite a good partnership. There is no good customer discussion without with the partners. And I would say the partnering evolution has been somewhere a mirroring of the business, okay? So when the business was still immature, okay, like a niche, the partners were mostly niche partners, okay? Very good partners, but niche partners. And the more we evaluate and hopefully we get to a level of maturity of this business and the cloud business, and the level of conversation is mature for you, and the more we have also other partners, so we diversify partners. We have also still niche partners, very specialized, but we have also more and more large global SI like Accenture or equivalent, and also software as a service partners, kind of application providers that are also completing the ecosystem of partnership. So, and to be very clear, partnership for us is quite important. It's strategic. So we can have direct conversation with you, but we have always partners, not between us, but at least with us, in order to be sure that we have the best complete solution for you, and that the adoption and the success of the project is guaranteed. Talking about partners, I'm not going to enter too much in details, but I wanted to take the opportunity of this session to give you an example of 3 or 4 customers. Okay, very different. The first one is Airbus Defence and Space. that's the leader in satellite imagery. Okay, so their problem was to deliver a high quality of image when you have snow. Okay, you can imagine that in an image when you have snow, you have also cloud. And when I say cloud, not the IT cloud, I mean the cloud, okay, or cloud of the sky. And so it's quite, and it's very strange, but it's quite difficult to identify what is cloud and what is snow. Okay, and so what we did was to help them to solve a problem that was they spent several years to improve the quality. And in a few months, a couple of months, I think 3 months maximum, we hopefully improve a lot the quality of the image. So that means customer satisfaction, that's related to machine learning, customer satisfaction, and hopefully more business. Ocado, that's a pure grocery online. The UK, quite a good brand in the UK, mainly today. So they have no store. You probably heard that some companies like Amazon bought stores. Okay, and so this company doesn't have store. They are only online. So for them, the key success factor is customer services. They need to have a fantastic customer satisfaction and be sure they answer to any problem reactively. So in order to manage and to do a triage of text messages or calls from their customers, okay, they're using the platform, machine learning platform, in order to triage, and hopefully they can answer when there is a time complaining, they can answer very quickly and solve the issue. So business as well. Spotify, you know probably these leading companies in music streaming. So their value proposal and the problem they want to solve, to be sure that every one of us has the opportunity to have all the music you want or we want in your hand. So what we do is to make possible to have a maximum of recommendation, suggestion to the users in order to be sure they are happy with the music. Hopefully they get from Spotify. Air Liquide, the last example. Air Liquide is quite a very old company, probably the oldest one company, very traditional in France, part of the CAC 40. They are a century company, and they were in a process of acquisition and growth as well, so looking for new talent, and they were not able to acquire so much because the IT was quite obsolete and not organized to acquire new companies. So what they did was to start a process of reflection with BCG, the Boston Consulting Group. And from this first ideas, they went to the creation of what they call an iLab, a kind of lab, okay, out of the company, to understand and to look at the new processes and new ideas of business and usage they need to have for entering the new world of digital. They did it. And from that, we enter in a digital transformation. We help them to manage transformation of all their users. I mean, 50,000 users, and now they just got the acquisition of Airgas in the US, 20,000 users, and we're working with them for the next transformation. That's the kind of transformation we did. So our commitment to you, and that somewhere what we need to have as a DNA when we are in enterprise is first to be sure that you have access to, when you are a customer, a prospect, a partner, you have access to all the innovation from Google, by discussing with product manager, discussing with all our people based in Amsterdam or in Europe, and also to our partners, our ecosystem. So we are also looking always to new partnership in order to bring more value to you, or in terms of benefits for your user or for your customers. Looking at always, and that principle I love is since I work for traditional companies, I would say I love to see that we are not looking contractually, technically, commercially, the business with you. So what we are trying to do is to always be very open in terms of platform, in terms of contractualization, and be sure that when hopefully you work with us, and we have a partnership. This partnership is not something like one unique, a mono partnership. It has to be a hybrid partnership. We understand perfectly well that you should have, and maybe that's an advice from me, you should have a multi-cloud strategy in order to be sure that you can hopefully manage the benefits of all vendors and leverage what you need, okay? And so lastly, so something quite new, because when I look at the first years I was working at Google, I was a bit worried that we didn't have professional services. So at the beginning, so we are having some support. Now, hopefully, we have a professional services organization. That's not a professional services organization that is for replacing the partners. This is for completing the partners, or just to be sure that you feel secure, okay? Hopefully you feel that your project will go to success, okay? And that's just for that, okay? The purpose of this professional services is that we want to be big enough to be good, not good, great in terms of impact for you, but not too big to not create some uncomfort for the partners ecosystem is part of the plan, hopefully, of the new Google Cloud that you want to have for you. So my conclusion, I think that the first time in advance, it's 1 minute 20. Only one thing I would love that you keep is, if you are in the process of introduction with Google Cloud today, one thing you should just open for conversation, for discovery workshop, okay? Work with the team. I'm sure you know most of the people in the Amsterdam office or the Brussels office. Start the discussion for discovery workshop and identify the project where we could help you, okay? Maybe problems that you don't know how to solve. Maybe we have a solution and we can. That's free, okay? That's absolutely free. We can invest some time with you in order to be sure that we can get some plan and hopefully it will work, okay? So no need for a big project. We can start small, discussion, look at what you need short term, and after we learn by working together. So I'm done with my presentation. I told you, short, 20 seconds left. I understand that we have also cocktail. André probably will present that. So we'll have a couple of, some glass of wine, hopefully good wine, good wine, not sure, yeah, good wine. So I'm happy to follow up with you, okay? Discussion, happy to discuss with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you, everybody. And I hope the wine is good. And this brings us to the end of this day. And I really hope you enjoyed and got inspired today with the keynotes, with the machine learning, with all the possibilities that we brought. I really hope that you got inspired by imagining the future like you did. I hope you got inspired by exploring possibilities with the design thinking and all the things that we discussed. I saw some great examples of that. And I don't want to close, really. Actually, instead, I want to do two proposals. Oops. I want to do two proposals. One, stay connected. So all the folks here on the tables, right? So we have customer engineers with Lee, and we have here the business people with Petra. Every table has them. We have our services organization. We have our partner organization. We have our marketing organization. And by the way, super thank you for Susanna and Shelby for pulling this off. Thank you. I want to propose stay connected and start a project in a safe environment, because we believe at Google to just create a safe environment and experiment stuff, just start stuff, just do maybe some stuff that already bubbled up at the tables here. Let's continue the discussion. Now we are all connected, and let's keep the conversation going in a safe environment. And it's okay to fail, don't worry, and do it a few times. You know how that works, right? And at some point, the future you imagined might be closer, okay? The second proposal is, and Eric already gave a little bit of heads up, we have a boat, right? And the boat is parked. We can get on the boat from 5 o'clock. So if you walk easy to the boat, and there will be lollipop girls and boys, and they will bring us to the boat. And we have an awesome time until 7 o'clock on the boat with nice drinks, and I hope the wine is good. Really, Eric, I hope so. So thank you again.